There's a stretch of road in Florida where the map just says restricted and nothing else. And the one time I actually stopped there, a park ranger told me most locals still won't ride it after dark. Yeah, that's not a movie trailer line. That's a real place, still standing, still open to the public if you actually know where to look. And it's one of the first things that tells you Florida is nothing like the version stamped on every postcard. I once read somewhere that the average visitor sees maybe 3% of what this state actually is before they fly home. 3%. And after actually driving it myself, town by town, past the parks and past the beaches, everyone photographs. That number genuinely feels generous. Because underneath the sunscreen and the mouse ears, this is a state where entire towns still talk to the dead for a living, where water older than the road sits 60 feet deep and clear as glass, where a man built a fortress out of stone completely alone and never let a single person watch him do it, and where the sky puts on a show almost every single afternoon that scientists still can't fully predict. Somebody asked me for the real Florida list, not the one with the mascot on it. The one that explains why this state has survived storms, booms, collapses, and things nobody's ever fully explained for 400 years straight. So here it is. Stay till the end, because number 7 is going to genuinely annoy you and nobody said it sooner, and the last one on this list is the kind of thing that changes how you plan every single trip after this. Comment Florida right now before I even start, because I want to know how many of you already knew about this state's actual best kept secret. Okay, so here's the myth. Everybody thinks Florida is just one mouse, one beach with neon signs, and a strip of souvenir shops selling the same t-shirt. That's it. That's the whole plan for a lot of people. Land, park, sunburn, leave. And genuinely, that's like flying to an entire country and only ever seeing one loud airport terminal. You are missing basically the entire point of why this state genuinely surprises and unsettles people at the exact same time. You're spending a week in one of the strangest, most layered states in the entire country, and you want to be spending 5 of those days in one single line for one single ride? Genuinely, let's fix that right now. I'm not saying the parks aren't worth a day, they genuinely are, just to say you felt the spectacle of it once. But treating it as the whole trip is like visiting an entire haunted mansion and only ever looking at the gift shop by the front door? So let's actually fix this. Let's go count down properly, biggest hidden gems first, building all the way up to the one that's genuinely non-negotiable by the end. Quick question before we start, how many of these 15 do you think you've actually heard of already? Be honest, because even people who visited this state 3 or 4 times usually only recognize 2 or 3 names on a list like this. That tells you everything about how much of this state stays hidden even from people who think they already know it. And genuinely, most of what makes this state worth visiting has almost nothing to do with a mouse ears headband or a gift shop by the highway exit. This state has survived hurricanes, land booms, epidemics, and things nobody can fully explain, and that wait is what actually makes it worth visiting slowly instead of rushing through in flip-flops. Number 15, Coral Castle and Homestead. Now I know what you're thinking, another roadside oddity. Sounds like every other gift shop attraction you've already skipped on a trip before. But hear me out. This place is an entire structure built out of solid coral rock, supposedly by one man working completely alone at night. And to this day, nobody has ever fully explained how he actually moved stones weighing several tons by himself. Local legend claims he never let a single soul watch him work, and the exact method he used left the site permanently unresolved even after decades of engineers trying to reverse engineer it. Most tourists drive right past it on the way to the Keys because it's just an unmarked wall along the highway, no obvious sign of what's actually sitting behind it. Stand in front of the giant coral rocking chair, run your hand along a 9-ton gate that swings open with one finger, and just take it in for a minute. It's unsettling in a way that genuinely doesn't feel like a manufactured tourist scare. Have you ever stood in front of something that felt genuinely impossible even while you were looking directly at it? Tell me in the comments, because that's exactly what this place does to people. Number 14, Casadaga, the psychic capital of the world. This one's criminally underrated, and I genuinely don't understand why more people don't put it on their list. A tiny town in central Florida founded by spiritualists over a century ago, where actual certified mediums still live and work today, holding readings in small cottage porches under old oak canopy. People assume you need to book something expensive or theatrical for a real spiritualist experience. You don't, though. Genuinely consider booking a short reading directly with a resident medium. It's sitting quietly off a 2-lane road, basically calm compared to the loud psychic shops downtown in bigger cities. I once read somewhere that this exact town has never stopped operating as a spiritualist camp since it was founded. Not once, not even during the state's biggest tourism booms. Not exaggerating, it's one of the strangest, most talked about facts about this entire state. Number 13, the Wilsonian on Miami Beach. Okay, this would sound small until you actually understand what it is. A collection of propaganda art, design objects, and political artifacts from the early 20th century, all curated in a way most tourists walking Ocean Drive have absolutely no idea even exists, 2 blocks away. real design history, and genuine political history in the same quiet building. Your brain will not compute how much depth is packed into this one modest museum until you're standing there. Here's the actual insider move though. Go on a weekday morning before the beach crowd even wakes up, because you'll basically have entire galleries to yourself. Would you have guessed an entire hidden layer of design and propaganda history was sitting quietly 2 blocks from the loudest beach strip in the state? Drop a yes or no below. I'm genuinely curious how many of you had no idea. Number 12, Reekyawashie Springs. Now this one's got a catch, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. The Mermaid show here has run continuously since the 1940s, and yes, real performers still hold their breaths and perform underwater in an actual spring, not a pool. But genuinely, it's worth catching a show. One of the deepest natural springs in the country, home to performers who train for months just to hold choreography underwater against real currents, all happening in water so clear you can see every detail from the underwater theater seats. It's a short show, but the payoff is one of those places that just quiets your brain for a second, especially realizing the water in front of you is genuinely older than the roads you drove in on. Book the earliest showtime slot you can. That's the actual hack here, not just showing up and hoping for good seats. Number 11, the Ringling in Sarasota. This is where it gets genuinely disturbing to how underrated it is, because barely anyone talks about the full scale of this complex compared to the quick mention it gets on most Florida lists. An entire estate built by a circus magnate in the 1920s, containing one of the largest art museums in the Southeast, a full historic circus museum, and a mansion modeled after Venetian palaces sitting right on the bay. The discovery of just how much was packed into one estate genuinely surprises most first-time visitors, a detail barely mentioned outside of Sarasota itself. You can literally spend an entire day walking through this exact complex today, still fully open to the public, and feel the weight of one of the wildest personal fortunes ever built in the state's history. Have you ever stood somewhere that made a piece of history feel less like a story and more like something you could genuinely still feel? That's exactly the Ringling. Number 10, the springs inside of Kala National Forest. People sleep on this one incredibly hard because absolutely nobody expects an actual untouched wilderness this close to major highways. But this stretch of springs is genuinely more unsettling and honestly more surprising, because it's one of the least commercialized spring systems left in the entire state, and manatees here genuinely drift right alongside swimmers in cooler months. Smaller access points are used specifically because they stay quieter than the big roadside springs, meaning you genuinely get pulled deeper into actual wilderness than most commercial spring parks closer to the coast ever manage. Some stretches here are so dense and quiet you'll genuinely forget you're only an hour from a major city, which is basically the entire appeal of coming out here. You're stuck thinking spring tours are all the same tourist trap experience, and you want to be experiencing one of the genuinely wildest, least commercialized spring systems left in the region instead. Genuinely, that's the whole reason to come out here. Number 9, the old jail in Colonial Quarter in St. Augustine. They call this one of the most overlooked places to actually understand this state's darkest history, and honestly, for once, the reputation is completely accurate. A fully preserved 19th century jail sitting inside the oldest continuously occupied European settled city in the entire country, with the Colonial Quarter recreating daily life going back over 4 centuries. Here's the real hack though. Skip the crowded, overpriced ghost tour groups everyone lines up for at dusk, and instead walk this complex during the day first. Same unsettling history, way more context, way fewer strangers crowding your view of each exhibit. Would you rather stand in a group of 30 people straining to hear a tour guide over street noise, or basically walk through this history at your own pace, reading every detail yourself? Yeah, thought so. Number 8, Ybor City in Tampa. This place runs on old cigar-factory energy, but doesn't have to feel like a nightlife strip if you actually time your visit right. Go for an actual Cuban sandwich, the same recipe style that's been serving this neighborhood for over a century, standing in line with actual locals instead of bar crawl groups fresh off a bachelorette bus. That's the actual secret here. Go on a weekday around midday, right between lunch rush and the evening crowd, and you'll get a table with genuinely zero wait. It's not a gimmick neighborhood just because a few guidebooks mention it now. It's actually one of the most historically significant immigrant communities in the entire state among people who actually grew up here. I was read somewhere that this exact neighborhood produced more hand-rolled cigars than almost anywhere else in the country at its peak. And honestly, once you walk the old factory buildings, that history genuinely makes sense in front of you. Number 7, and this is the one that's gonna make you a little mad, nobody mentioned sooner. Bot Tower Gardens. Everyone knows the famous theme parks. Everyone photographs from the entrance gate, but this place is one of the only ones in the entire state where you can actually walk quiet garden paths built specifically to slow you down, with a singing bell tower playing live carry-on recitals most visitors have never even heard of. There's an actual working carry-on here, and I mean genuinely a functioning instrument, where a bellmaster plays live recitals on certain days of the week. You get an entire unfiltered sense of the state's quieter side in this exact spot, something most theme park itineraries genuinely skip entirely. Why doesn't everyone know this? Genuinely, why does this stay so quiet compared to the theme park circuit? Comment below if this is the first time you're hearing about Bok Tower, because I guarantee you it's most of you reading this right now. Number 6, the Everglades away from the main tourist boardwalk. Now this one blew my expectations completely the first time I actually got out onto the water. It's not just a park, it's one of the only subtropical wetland ecosystems of its kind on the entire planet, home to species found nowhere else in the country, all moving through a slow river of grass most visitors only see from a parking lot. For decades, this ecosystem has been one of the most studied and most misunderstood landscapes in the country, meaning everything living out there carries enormous ecological weight most people never stop to consider. Go with a small guided airboat or canoe tour early in the morning, and you could drift through this exact landscape, genuinely feeling the weight of how much of the country's natural history depends on this single wetland. Most people only ever hear about the Everglades in passing on a highway sign. Actually getting out onto the water and seeing the full scale, it hits completely, genuinely differently. Number 5, Dry Tortugas, the gateway to understanding just how far this state actually stretches. This park sits nearly 70 miles past Key West, home to a massive 19th century ford, coral reefs, and open water that still tells the story of the state's most remote chapter. Some parts of this fort still show the exact same brick walls standing since before the Civil War, and stepping inside for even a few minutes tells you more about the state's military history than any museum plaque downtown ever could. Taking the boat out with an actual park guide who knows the fort's full history gives you context and genuine scale of the place in a way no highway rust stop pamphlet can replicate. Choose the earliest departure you can. The difference in crowd size and lighting between the first boat out and the last one back is completely night and day once you've done both. Number 4, the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum. If you've seen one photo representing the mystique of this state's coastline, it probably involved a beach at sunset somewhere south of here, but this is the actual place to understand what centuries of shipwrecks and maritime history along this coast really mean. The lighthouse itself is small in footprint, genuinely narrow in places, but it's run by people directly connected to actual maritime archaeologists still researching shipwrecks off this coast today, meaning the information you get here is far more accurate than anything printed on a souvenir shop postcard. But here's the myth everyone gets wrong. People assume lighthouses here are purely decorative photo stops. They aren't. This one is a genuine working aid to navigation with a real archaeology program still active today. The real move, and I mean this is completely non-negotiable, climb it near sunset and actually ask the staff questions instead of rushing through snapping photos from the top. Number 3, Fort Mose just outside St. Augustine. The site associated with the first legally sanctioned free black settlement in what would become the United States, still marked with historical markers and a small visitor center nearly 3 centuries after it was founded. Historians have actually had to reconstruct much of the site's story through archaeology alone, since so little of the original structure survived, a detail genuinely unique compared to almost every other historic site in the state. This exact site inspired renewed academic interest in museum exhibits far beyond the state's own borders, and standing there with a park ranger, genuinely, you completely understand why. Your quiet at this park disappears almost entirely once you actually read the full timeline posted along the trail, and that's honestly part of the whole experience. Standing somewhere that makes your brain genuinely register how much history got left out of the textbook version. Number 2, Kennedy Space Center, was specifically the bus tour out to the actual launch pads. A massive, still fully operational launch facility on the Space Coast that has sent human beings off this exact planet for decades, with real rockets, real control rooms, and barely any of the gift shop energy once you're out on the tour bus. It's included in general admission, which genuinely feels like a mistake given how much genuine space history is packed into one single guided bus loop. Weekday tours here turn this loop into this genuinely overwhelming sense of scale. Real launch towers, real crawler transporters, the way this program actually looked from the ground, the way footage never quite captures. Go on a weekday morning tour, not the packed weekend afternoon slot. That's the actual difference between actually hearing your guide clearly and standing crammed against a window in the back. And number 1, the one I promised would change how you plan every single trip after this. Watching an actual Florida summer thunderstorm roll in off the water, not from inside a hotel lobby, standing somewhere open with a real view of the horizon. You're standing on a crowded beach boardwalk checking your phone for the 5th time tonight, and you want to witness something that actually captures what this state's relationship with its own wild weather genuinely means. Genuinely, that's this. These storms happen almost daily in summer, building fast over open water, lightning stacking across the horizon in a way meteorologists still study specifically because of how uniquely this state generates them, a pattern that shaped this coastline for as long as anyone's kept records. Here's the actual cheat code though. The one thing that changes everything about this experience: find a safe, open spot away from the water and just watch the sky build for 20 minutes before the rain actually hits. Don't treat it like background noise to your dinner reservation. That's the real secret this entire list has been building toward this whole time. This state's relationship with wild, untamed nature is completely unlike anywhere else in the country, and everything on this list circles back to that same truth. You can go to the exact same 15 places I just gave you, but if you go without understanding that context, you'll walk away with a shallow, sunburned version of what's actually there. So here's your actual homework, and I genuinely mean this. Comment below with the 3 places from this list you're adding to your trip first, right now, before you close this out. Writing it down, actually typing it out in the comments, is what turns a vague maybe into an actual real plan. That's not just me being dramatic for effect. That's a real psychological trick. Committing to something publicly makes you significantly more likely to actually follow through on it. So do it. Come in your top 3 right now while it's still fresh in your head. And if this saved you from planning another basic forgettable Florida trip, subscribe, because next week I'm breaking down the exact 5-day route that hits half of this entire list without you wasting an entire day standing in one single line. One last thing before you go. Almost every single place on this list costs less than 1 day pass to one single theme park. That's not an accident, that's the whole philosophy behind this list. The best version of this state has never actually been about how many rides you rode. It's about actually understanding the weight of what happened here and why it still shapes everything today. And genuinely, the biggest mistake people make with this state isn't picking the wrong places. It's treating 4 centuries of real, complicated history as nothing but a backdrop for one sunburned weekend. This state rewards people who show up willing to actually slow down. If you take just one thing away from this whole list, let it be that. Pick just one spot on this list, actually slow down, and let yourself feel a little surprised by it. That's genuinely the difference between a trip you forget in a month and one that stays with you for years. Come back in 7 days and tell me which one on this list surprised you the most. I'll see you then. A historic open-air market dating back to 1934 filled with small, family-run food stalls that have genuinely fed this city through the entire history of Hollywood's golden age right up to now. Many of these exact stalls are still run by the same families who opened them generations ago, meaning the recipes and the people making them genuinely haven't changed even as the entire neighborhood around the market transformed. It's free just to walk through and browse, which genuinely feels like a mistake given how much history and genuine food variety is packed into one single space. Weekday mornings turn this market into this genuinely overwhelming mix of smells, from fresh baked goods to actual regional specialties, the kind of variety photos genuinely undersell no matter how good the lighting is. Go right when it opens on a weekday, not at peak weekend rush. That's the actual difference between comfortably trying several stalls and standing in line at every single one. You want to be doing a real food tour of this city and you're paying for a guided tour that just takes you to 5 restaurants somebody else already picked out. Genuinely, this single market gives you more variety in one morning than most paid food tours put together. This exact market also sits right next to a modern outdoor shopping district now, meaning you get the genuine historic charm alongside actual modern conveniences, all in the same walkable stretch of a few blocks. Hiking to the Hollywood side, the real way. And number 1, the one I promised would change how you plan every single trip after this. Hiking directly up to the Hollywood sign itself, not the parking lot overlook everyone photographs from a mile away. You're standing at a crowded scenic turnout, photographing a sign that's genuinely tiny from that distance, and you want to be standing close enough to actually see the individual letters up close? Genuinely, let's fix that right now this trip. Most visitors never realize there's an actual public trail starting from Griffith Park that takes you right up behind the sign itself, completely free, with sweeping views of the entire city the whole way up. Here's the actual cheat code though, the one thing that changes everything about this experience. Start the hike right at sunrise instead of midday. The temperature is cooler, the light is dramatically better for photos, and you'll beat both the crowds and the afternoon heat completely. That's the real secret this entire list has been building toward this whole time. Timing beats destination every single time, no matter which city you're actually in. You can go to the exact same 15 places I just gave you, but if you go at the wrong hour or the wrong season, you'll walk away with a mediocre, crowded version of what's actually there waiting for you. And genuinely, wear actual hiking shoes for this one, not sandals. It's a real trail with real elevation gain, not a paved sidewalk, and showing up unprepared is genuinely the #1 reason people turn back before reaching the top. Bring water too. More than you think you'll need, this trail has almost no shade for most of the climb, and the sun here gets genuinely intense even in the early morning once you're a mile or so in. So here's your actual homework, and I genuinely mean this. Comment below with the 3 places from this list you're adding to your trip first right now before you close this out. Writing it down, actually typing it out in the comments is what turns a vague maybe into an actual real plan. That's not just me being dramatic for effect, as a real psychological trick. Committing to something publicly makes you significantly more likely to actually follow through on it. So do it, comment your top 3 right now while it's still fresh in your head. And if this saved you from blaring another basic, forgettable Los Angeles trip, subscribe, because next week I'm breaking down the exact 3-day route that hits half of this entire list without you wasting hours stuck on the freeway trying to figure out which canyon road actually connects to which. One last thing before you go. Almost every single place on this list is either completely free or costs less than a single overpriced smoothie on the Sunset Strip. That's not an accident. That's the whole philosophy behind this list. The best version of this city has never actually been about how close you can get to a celebrity's gate. It's about knowing where to actually look and when to actually show up. And genuinely, the biggest mistake people make with this city isn't picking the wrong places, it's assuming the whole trip has to happen inside one neighborhood. Los Angeles rewards people who are willing to actually drive 30 minutes in a different direction than everyone else on the road that morning. If you take just one thing away from this whole list, let it be that. Pick just one spot on this list, drive out for a single morning, and actually see it before the crowds even wake up. That's genuinely the difference between a trip you forget in a month and one you keep talking about years later. And if you're the kind of traveler who's already done the Walk of Fame and the tour bus route once before and felt like there was genuinely nothing new left to see, this list is proof that's simply not true. This city has spent decades hiding an entire second identity behind the version everyone photographs, and almost nobody bothers to go looking for it. Honestly, that's true of a lot of famous cities. The version everyone photographs is rarely the version locals actually love, and this sprawling, spread out place might be the single clearest example of that gap in the entire country. Come back in 7 days and tell me which one on this list surprised you the most. I'll see you then.